Hello, welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. And so today I have a special treat for everybody. I have actually mentioned that I was going to be interviewing Anne Swanson, and the day has arrived. And so I'm so happy to have her here today. And I would like to give a little introduction for those of you who don't know who she is, though I will say that I'm using both of her books in my yoga teacher training currently. And I use one of her books in my last yoga teacher training. So I'm super excited to have her here. So for those of you who don't know, Anne Swanson, she teaches yoga and meditation to busy people with busy minds. She's the author of the book Science of Yoga and Meditation for the Real World. Anne wasn't a naturally chill person, and these practices didn't come easy to her, which I can resonate with and appreciate. She's overcome chronic pain and anxiety, which led her to India to study yoga, to China to explore Tai Chi, and to earn a Master of Science in Yoga Therapy. Hello, Anne. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Hi, so good to be here with you.
Um, so you are recently back from having a baby.
Yes, my first baby.
Oh my gosh, first. So how is everything going?
Good. Yeah. He's 4 months old now, and I'm back working part-time, and it's definitely an adjustment. I thought I could work more hours than I actually can, I think. So that's been a thing that I'm learning, and we keep adapting the schedule to work with him. And so yeah, it's just a learning curve for sure. I'm sure many moms can relate to me.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you have so many tools with your broad variety of knowledge from meditation and anatomy, which I very much resonate with because I teach anatomy, I teach meditation, but like I think it's more rare to find people that are trained in the sort of like gross anatomy, the subtle anatomy, and then in addition to that, you're very wise in meditation and not just one technique, but what I really love about your book is that you make meditation accessible to everyone, which is especially in today's society. It's like people's attention span are like that. It's like little reels on TikTok and YouTube that, it's like very representative of how people's minds work. And so
Yeah.
the fact that, I just want to say right off the bat, just a little bit of flattery, but it's true. It comes from a good place is like, I really love how you've taken these very important, like deep wisdom concepts and you've made them into accessible and bite-sized chunks for people. So I just want to ask, like right off the bat, just to dive right in,
Yeah.
was that difficult for you?
Uh, That's how I think is how do I make it practical and fit into our lives? Like I'm a yoga therapist and I work one-on-one with people with chronic pain and anxiety and multiple health conditions. And, we're all busy and it's hard to get into these habits. So I give them these sort of tools that are in the book Meditation for the Real World. I only have a Korean copy of it right now, but I give them
There's
these
English copy.
tools that are basically like 1 minute meditations. That's one of my favorite features of it. And on the cover of the book, you have somebody sitting on a subway and they are sitting there with headphones on, presumably listening to a meditation. You can, rather than scrolling while you wait, you can meditate while you wait. This is something I do at the doctor's office when I'm waiting to go in because I get really anxious and I have this thing where I pass out at the doctor's office sometimes. So rather than scrolling and feeding that anxiety, I just take a few deep breaths and do a 1 minute meditation. For me as a new mom, one place that I've been fitting my like short little meditations is when I pump. And that is an activity that I felt like really frustrated with, and it feels like a time suck. But I can,
Right?
yes, I can answer
Sorry.
emails while I do it sometimes, but I try to take that moment of like gratitude that I can provide my baby milk at this time. And and just take some deep breaths and feel and be present. So using those little moments that we already have rather than having to like carve out what we think of as a traditional meditation practice of 20 plus minutes that, we're might be setting ourselves up to fail, especially I know as a new mom, finding 20 plus minutes where I don't have him, usually I meditate with him in my lap and it works some days and it doesn't. So sometimes that meditation is 5 minutes and then we play.
I think it's important to not be a perfectionist when it comes to these spiritual practices because I'm not sure if I came up with this quote but I use it all the time. It is spirituality is the practical application of the tools.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what you're doing. When we have this idea that it needs to be set in this way and it needs to be like I used to practice Ashtanga 6 days a week. And I remember after a year and a half, I just felt like it became a chore and I started feeling trapped in this sort of box. And then I met a teacher who she started changing up the things. And I was like, oh, you can do that. It's like she gave me permission to change the structure around a little bit. And you know what? My heart opened to the practice again. And I feel like you do that with meditation, but you also do it with anatomy. So again, I don't want to hop around too much, but
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the work that you do. I think it's very important. And I think that, like I said, it makes it accessible to people. I mean, if we had a nickel for every time somebody said, oh, I'm too busy to meditate, we'd have a lot of
Yeah.
nickels.
And same with practicing yoga. My personal yoga practice is little 5 minute breaks while I'm waiting for the water to boil in the kitchen, doing some sun salutations against the island in the kitchen. I will get down on the floor when I'm next to my baby and, he's winding down for bed and I want to make sure I'm there in case he needs me. And I'll do some child's pose and cat cows. So my yoga practice is like that too, and these little yoga breaks or yoga snacks. This is a concept that's becoming more and more popularized in the exercise physiology world due to recent research is that when we do little breaks of physical movement throughout the day, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes throughout the day, it is more effective than doing a 1 hour. It's more effective for many measures, one being your blood glucose levels and your metabolism, which we're seeing is really linked to many diseases and overall health and mood disorders. So for me, having these little breaks is not only more practical, but it makes sense based off of the science, the emerging science.
It's nice to have that empirical data to back up what the yogis know and practitioners have known for many, many, many years. But having that sort of backing up as far as becoming popularized certainly helps our mission, right? And I just want to share. So I was trying to talk to my dad about meditation. He recently came down. I had a birthday, and I was trying to sell him on it. And he kind of like he was like. So can you just like tell me about it, like meditation, and he was very curious about it. And I said a couple of things and I could see his eyes glaze over as far as like the science. And I said, it's like a little built-in vacation for your day rather than going far away and spending so much money. You can have 5, 10 minutes throughout your day, have a little vacation for your mind, depending on the technique. And then you come back and you feel clearer, more focused, more relaxed, your digestive system's better, you feel less stressed. And I think that that really appeals to people. I mean, that appeals to us. I'm a busy studio owner, life coach, all these different things. You're a busy mom, yoga therapist, right? And I'm sure doing lots of these different interviews. So it just makes sense. And I feel like it's a very smart way to keep these sacred practices alive. And so it is really a modern approach. And that's why I really love the title of your book, Meditation for the Real World. And if I might, I just want to read like a tiny snip. And I've
Yeah,
read
please.
this in front of my yoga classes before, and I really have such affection for it. So it's on page 13. What is meditation? Meditation involves a different kind of focus to the one you're used to in everyday life. Your mind likely approaches work projects and other goal-oriented tasks by analyzing, evaluating, and judging in order to achieve a specific outcome. Meditation, my favorite part, involves a softer kind of focus through a nurturing lens without pressure to win or succeed. And I love that line because I've led many, many different trainings, and people, like especially type A people, that they're the ones that need this the most, I think. They get so caught up in like the rules and the I don't know, the guidelines, and I think they might even kind of like guilt or shame themselves, which just kind of blocks the practice. And you have this sort of divine feminine energy when you are presenting this material, which allows it to speak to people's hearts. And that's another reason why I assigned one of this book for my yoga teacher training for supplemental materials for my students, because I want them to understand that aspect of meditation, because it really is heart opening when we let go of the stories.
Yeah, yeah, I think that that balance of the feminine and masculine energy is really important to me in presenting the material is like how can it be nurturing but also practical and science-backed, evidence-based, but still spiritual and hold the essence of the practice. Whatever spirituality means to you. For me, it means being closer to nature, our true nature, Mother Nature.
Hmm. Yeah. It's so I feel like it's been resonating with a lot of the people that, like, when I read it in class, I just see people's heads bobbing like yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, okay, we're doing something, we're reaching people. And speaking of nurturing, so we were talking a little bit about how you're a new mom and how you've overcome like a lot of different things like anxiety and pain. And one hot topic right now that I'd love to expound upon with you is yoga is the new morphine, like finding ways to use yoga to relieve pain and feel good naturally. Would you want to expand upon that, especially with your most recent experience? I'm sure it's very
Yeah.
like close to the forefront of your heart and mind.
Yes, yes. I've dealt with chronic joint pain since I was a teenager.
Mm,
And eventually I started to realize, wait, not everybody experiences full body pain when you get bad sleep or you have a glass of wine or you eat something inflammatory. I started to realize this in college that, this isn't like something I have to live with. So I was seeking answers. And I went to yoga for the physical aspect of it. And when we got to the meditation part or the spiritual parts of the class, I'd literally be looking at my watch, like, it is time to go. In my head, I'd be going through my list of things to do because I thought that was a better use of time. And then after practicing for a while, teachers would integrate different techniques that actually worked for me. Not all of them worked for everybody, but there would be a technique that did work for me, that gave me a glimpse of what meditation can provide. And I would ease my anxiety, which would then help with my pain and my sleep, and they're all interconnected. So as I started to feel more and more relief, I devoted my life to this and figuring out why and how it works. That's where I went through the science of it, but then also figuring out its roots and studying yoga in India and Tai Chi and Qigong in China and just exploring the traditional practices too.
I think the path of the yogi is truth comes from the experience of the within the framework of your body. And I think that's what makes your work so powerful, is because, for better or worse, like you had to suffer and you felt what that was like in your bones, in your joints, and like living that day to day. And so then when you found something and your mind was already like, okay, I don't want to have to be stuck this way. Maybe there's a possibility. It's like your mind went to work for you, but also your heart. And then, maybe from past life, good karma, you ended up in a yoga class.
Yeah.
And then it absolutely changed your life. So I'm curious because in the last 2, 3 years, I've been back and forth to India about 4 times, and it's Mother India has really sort of like pulled me in. I love the teachings, and it's really connected a lot of things for me. Your time in India, like I guess how old were you, and like what things were, I guess, illuminated for you during your time in India, and what part of India too?
Yeah. It was after college. I graduated college right when the recession started. So I joke that me and my friends were like, well, there's no jobs in the US, so let's go to China. So I moved to China to teach English.
Oh,
And I had actually studied Chinese, Mandarin Chinese in undergraduate. So it also seemed like a natural progression to practice my Chinese. And when I got there, I was very isolated. It was depressing. The pollution, feeling like everybody was staring at me. It was a really depressing time of my life. And I turned to both yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong during that time for my own healing. And so, yeah, it was just a big part of my journey going to China. And then from there, I went to India to do my advanced teacher training. And in India, I guess I was, must have been, yeah, I was in my mid 20s. And just as a seeker, I was trying to understand, how can I integrate this into my own body? I don't think it was about teaching at that point. It was
mm,
more about learning for me. But my teacher, Yogi Shivadas, he was in Dharamsala at the time where the Dalai Lama lives. And he integrated a lot of anatomy and physiology. And I knew that that was a piece that I was missing. I studied art undergrad, so I studied photography and film and drawing and
you are a Renaissance
languages.
woman.
Yeah, it really came full circle when I've gotten to work with these artists for Science of Yoga, which I worked with one of the best illustrators in the world, Erin Lewis, and then also New York Times illustrator Michelle Mildenberg Lara for Meditation for the Real World. So it's really come full circle, as many of our stories do. But I studied art, so I didn't have that science background at the time. And my teacher introduced and opened my eyes to the amazingness of the human body. And from there, I was like, the best way to be involved and understand yoga and ultimately become the best yoga teacher I can be is to go into the medical field. I thought maybe I'll become a doctor or a physical therapist. So I was doing all the prerequisites for that when I got back to the United States. I studied anatomy and physiology and physics and biomechanics and took all the classes needed. Eventually, I thought I was going to apply for physical therapy. And as I was about to put in my application for that, the first Masters of Science in Yoga Therapy popped up. That's really what I want to do. That's really my journey. So serendipitously, it all led me to the right place. But India was a big part of that, and interestingly, India was a big part of me going into the science aspect of it.
It sounds like many wonderful journeys. There was some serendipity there right before, you're about to take one track, and it's interesting. So I lived in Japan. I taught Japanese, or I'm sorry, I taught Japanese and English overseas. So it's like interesting how the sort of like parallel universes coming together. And it is wonderful how in these Eastern philosophies and just in Eastern culture, subtle anatomy exists. And most of the time, I have found that you don't have to qualify it. Like the fact that there exist chakras, like in India, they'd be like, yes, of course, that exists. Or like in China, like that chi exists, right? So this is something that a lot of times we have to qualify. So in discussing anatomy in your book, I really love how you weave together the gross and subtle anatomies. Was that difficult? Again, you have your brain works in the way that you want to present it in a way that people are going to understand. Was it difficult to be able to bring together those worlds?
I'm glad you recognized that. That was a really important aspect of it for me. You know, I think people want it to align perfectly. They want the chakras to be something that is aligned with specific glands, and it just doesn't work that way. That
Mm.
was something I discovered is it doesn't align in the way people want it to, but it does align in a lot of ways. So it's something that we should be learning also as yoga teachers and yogis that are really into it, but also recognizing that the subtle anatomy doesn't have to perfectly align with anatomy in the Western way. That's kind of the beauty, is that there's overlaps, but there's also differences that we can respect. So in that way, it's a little difficult, but I think it's important.
Agreed. And I think that that's probably one of the harder things for Western-minded people to wrap their head around because they want it like black and white. They want to make sure that like the each of the chakras line up with a ganglion nerve complex or some sort of organ or something so that they can sort of like pin their mind to it in some way. But I find that Eastern, or I could say subtle anatomy, you kind of take a step back and look at the whole of the
Yes.
person. You have to consider the whole. Whereas in allopathic medicine, we sort of like itemize and I don't want to say objectify because that's too strong and there's negative connotation there, but it's like you take one specific thing and study it to death, where it's like, no, no, the nervous system, the fascia, all of these things are already like working together. How
Yes.
could you can appreciate it separately for educational purposes, but you got to understand the whole.
Exactly. So that's why in Science of Yoga, I break it down by system in the beginning of the book, where we dive
Love
into
that.
yoga for the skeletal system and the cardiovascular and muscular, and break it down by each system. But I urge the reader to then look at it as a unified whole, to forget the separations. So we learn the separations because, like you said, that's good for our brains and learning. But
Sure.
then can we allow those separations to blur and look at it as a holistic, integrated approach, which is what yoga is? So, for example, the way I conceptualize prana, or in Tai Chi, we call it chi, is that it perhaps before they were able to dissect out the different parts and they weren't looking at the body in that way, they felt all of the systems working together, right? You feel the different types of energy that are in our body, the electrical energy of the nervous system pulsating through you, the mechanical energy of the pumps in your cardiovascular system and your heart moving and allowing that flow within.
Mm.
The different types of energy all coming together, all the systems working together for this unified buzz that we feel, that energy, that aliveness, that vital life force energy, as it's sometimes described. So it's something that is felt, but then we break it apart. We can't say it's just the nervous system. No, it's all of those things. It's that aliveness within us. So we learn the separations, but then we look at the Eastern approach as the combining, the wholeness of it. One interesting thing that I found when researching meditation for the real world was the science of the brain and how neuroscientists are approaching it differently than before. I worked
Mm.
with Dr. Sarah Lazar on this book to integrate the most cutting edge research. She is a Harvard neuroscientist that studies both meditation and yoga. And she said, neuroscientists aren't as much interested in just how different separate areas of the brain are affected from meditation and yoga. That is the old model where we looked at, okay, the prefrontal cortex builds up from yoga, that helps us with cognition and focus. The hippocampus related to memory that gets larger with meditation, which helps us with our working memory. Those things are all true. But what they're looking at as the field has developed is the integrated wholeness of the brain. We don't just have firing in these separate areas of the brain. We have network activity. So the brain
Mm.
works together in these different sequences or network activity. It's not just about this one area. It's about how meditation and yoga turn down activity of certain networks. For example, you may have heard of the default mode network, which is involved when we're like mind wandering and thinking
Mm.
about things that we're not doing. But it also turns up activity in the central executive network, which is related to focus and higher thinking. And so when we look at meditation from this network activity and yoga from this network activity, we can see that now, as the science is progressing, we're looking at it more holistically. It's not about the separations. Yes, the separations are useful to learn, but even the science is evolving to look at it more holistically.
How very yogic of them.
Yes.
It's full circle. It reminds me of, my yogic path. I studied sort of dualistic, like traditional, like eight limb path of yoga. And then when I would meditate, I'd do something like a Vipassana style meditation, which is sort of like transcending the body, the mind, and all of that, and like being in that space of like nothingness or blankness. But then the fact is like you have to come back into your body. And so then I started studying more like non-dual, like Tantra type stuff, where it's like integration. You know that what you are not. And that's where the dualist philosophy would come in. And that's maybe like where the sort of looking at things separately. It's like, okay, this does that, it doesn't do that, but it's influenced by that, right? But it's not that. But then eventually you have to come back into the whole. So, and I love how you said like the nervous system is pulsing and like the blood and the lymph through your body is pulsing because it all does work together in this beautiful symphony and harmony, and they're constantly influencing each other. And I love books like yours because it's, taking the credibility of like people from Harvard and of course your own credibility and bringing it together like, okay, this this is actually what's happening, and this is why you're getting the results. It's turning down this faculty of the brain, turning this up, so then you have more dharana, you have more dhyana, you have the focus, and then you can show up in your life in this way, not just sitting on a cushion chanting Om, but you can show up in your life and be a better, more effective employee, boss, mother, father, friend, whatever it is. And like that's where the spirituality comes together. It's like we do these practices, and with thanks to books like yours and research like yours, and help to enhance the quality of people's lives, which is like what it's all about. It's so practical.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So this book, Meditation for the Real World, there's a lot of different kinds of meditation. And throughout my courses, we kind of dive into, there's actually so many of them. So we don't get to all of them, though I encourage people to keep reading it. But I guess where you're at right now with what's going on in your life and being a new parent, what kinds of meditation are you using that maybe you could expound upon for the audience? I know that it's maybe like in little snips, but would
Yes.
you be able to enlighten?
Yes, definitely little snips. And if you go to meditationfortherealworld.com, your listeners can get a 5-day meditation challenge that is less than 10 minutes a day and dives through some of the most effective methods based off of science. And I integrate music that is optimized to change your brainwaves. So go to meditationfortherealworld.com to experience some of these things. But I do a lot with sound. That's one that I integrate through those meditations because it's been so effective for me. I work with an sound engineer who has 2 master's degrees in
You have
this,
so
and
many cool
she
friends.
yes, yes. She is so amazing. She made music that goes with the meditations. Sometimes I'll listen to those and synchronize my breath with the music.
Mm.
I'll become present with the sounds. So that's been one of the things for me recently is sound. And then, of course, just back to the basics. Whenever I can't think of what should I do the 1 minute meditation that is basically the five senses meditation. We can do that together right now, just 1 minute,
Yay, let's do it.
anytime, anywhere, whether I'm pumping or I'm staring at emails and my eyes are glazing over and I need a break. Our brains are not meant to stare at screens like this. It's a very small world, especially when you're on a phone. They show that makes you feel even smaller the smaller the screen is. So, however you're listening or watching this right now, if you can, if it's safe to do so, look away from the screen. If you're driving, you're already looking away. So you broaden your vision. Soak in what you see. If you're able to look out a window, that's wonderful. Look at a tree or look down a hallway so that your eyes can soften and relax. And start by noticing what you see. Take it in. If it's safe to do so, you can close your eyes and also notice what you see, the colors, the shapes, textures, even with the eyes closed. Now, shift your attention to my voice and the sounds around you, from far away to up close. Maybe you can even hear the sound of your own breath. Take a deeper, fuller inhale through the nose and exhale. Notice any smells with the next few breaths. Notice any tastes. And notice how your body physically feels. Your body's constantly speaking to you. What is it saying right now? Maybe it's telling you to adjust your posture or to move a little bit. Listen, pay attention to your physical sensations. And if your eyes are closed, flutter your eyelashes and take back in what you see. Absorb simultaneously what you hear, smell, taste, and feel. And with this new present moment awareness, maybe you're recognizing that your body needs something. Maybe you need a sip of water. Maybe you need to take a break and go for a walk. Maybe you need to call a friend and tell them you appreciate them after this podcast episode. Notice what would be nourishing to you. So that's a really easy one you can do because all you have to remember is the five senses. Doesn't matter what order you do it. Just go through your five senses, less than a minute, and you're tuned in.
Hmm. I love that. And, you know, it follows the eight limb system of yoga. It's a form of pratyahara. It is stimulating of the senses and then drawing them in so that then you can go deeper, you can focus. And that's exactly what you did. And then it brings you into meditation. And then, yeah, that was lovely. And that is simple. I mean, what that took like maybe 90 seconds. And that's something that you can do just like on the cover of your book on a bus or subway, or like you said, even, you know, you don't want to close your eyes and stuff, but you can, you know, take some deep breaths and broaden the vision so that you can absorb through your periphery. I saw a study and it said something along the lines of that our brains see like that we in our vision we see 80% and the rest is like 20% ish that your mind just makes up. I was like, wow, this really is illusion. So
Yeah.
but so people can find all of this, and we'll include this in the the show note links, as far as links to your meditation, to your books, and so the 5 day challenge they can sign up for free.
Yeah, well, go to meditationfortherealworld.com. You'll find out about how to get the book wherever you are, and you can join the 5 day challenge. And then for yoga teachers, head to Yoga Survival Kit or yogateachersurvivalkit.com. Either one leads you there. So yogateachersurvivalkit.com. And I have a survival kit that goes with the book Science of Yoga. I have the new edition out right now. So
Which is on its way to me.
yes, the second edition, finally.
I'm very excited. I'll be so fancy. I'll be the talk of the town with showing it off to my students. So, um, well, I'm sure we can just keep talking all day, but I know that you're busy, and I very much appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and yeah, thank you for all the work that you're doing in the world, Anne.
Thank you.
Take care.